Hey, it's it's not too early in the morning, but I just got all the kids to school and my husband's at work and it's finally quiet. So, when it's quiet like this, I'm always tempted to just go back to sleep, because it's finally quiet. No one's asking me for anything. And it's so tempting to just fall back asleep. But more often than not, I do try to get some things done that I wouldn't be able to do otherwise because it's quiet. And when it is quiet like this, I tend to, I'm alone in my thoughts. I tend to reflect on a lot of stuff. I don't know if I mentioned this in my channel before, but I do have several mental health diagnoses, and they are bipolar 2. I have been diagnosed also with generalized anxiety disorder. I'm going to get more into all these, but I'm just going to list them first. I have OCD, it's obsessive compulsive disorder, and that includes something called dermatillomania or excoriation disorder, and that's skin picking. There's also something called trichotillomania, which is when you do hair pulling. I don't have the hair pulling thing, but I do have the dermatillomania thing. And I'll get more into that later, but I just wanted to explain what those are. Lastly, I've been diagnosed with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, and possibly I have borderline personality disorder. Now, I haven't been officially diagnosed with it, but I wanted to mention it because I've had two different mental health professionals suggest that I probably have it. And here's the thing. It's very common to have comorbid diagnoses. That means you have more than one. If you have bipolar, it is more likely you're also going to have some other diagnoses, such as, like what I said, OCD, anxiety, and stuff. Borderline personality disorder can sometimes be mistaken for bipolar and vice versa, and sometimes it can be misdiagnosed. So I don't know, but that's the thing about mental health. It's kind of a long journey of trying to figure out what's going on. And there's this other mental diagnosis called border polar, and that is when you have borderline personality disorder and bipolar 1 or 2. I have bipolar 2. At least that's what I was diagnosed with a while ago. So all that to say, the labels and the names are good because it gives you language, especially if you're professionally diagnosed with it. Other professionals could take you seriously and prescribe medication to help you or therapy. So the problem I have with all that is it's not always very consistent across the board getting help, and I think that's a problem for everybody who is on this quest to figure out what's going on. And anyone who has tried to figure out their mental health diagnosis will tell you it's such a winding, weird journey or road to get there. Because you have to figure out, okay, I need to figure out who to see. I don't have a therapist. You have to go find one. There are so many. You have to, if you don't have insurance, it's really expensive. It's hundreds of dollars per. It could be like $100 for like 1 hour or more, and it's a lot. Like most people can't do that. I happen to have insurance, so it's always a copay of $30 or $40 for me for an hour. And, that adds up too. It's worth it, but, and also it's very draining. Sitting and talking to a therapist, whether you're in person or over the phone or something, it's just a very draining experience. So I get kind of annoyed when, if someone's talking about a problem they have, or, anxiety or depression they have or whatever, and people say, well, here, just go to therapy. That's all you got to do. And, they'll put you on some meds. It's really not that simple. And it's so frustrating when, you're just trying to talk and you just want someone to listen, like a friend or something. And they just say, well, you need to just go see a therapist. Have you tried doing that? And also a lot of times people are not open to new patients, doctors and like psychiatrists and stuff. So for me, I've always had to see a psychiatrist to manage all the medication I take. And I also try to see a therapist. The therapist thing is not always as consistent as I'd like it to be. Like one time I had a therapist, it was going okay, and then she moved and she left her practice. And it left me with not another therapist right away. To be fair, she did ask to help me find one, but at that point in time, I didn't have, I had different issues going on. I'll get into that later. The point is, if you have a friend or a family member who came to you and they're being vulnerable and they're telling you about something going on, they might not necessarily need you to fix anything. I think most people know deep down, like, I have these issues and I need help. But I think most of the time when someone's venting, they know you can't really help them, but they do know that they need someone to just listen. Just be a listening ear and just say, oh, that's so hard. I'm so sorry. And you don't even have to offer up your story unless it just depends on the context and the person. And yeah, but sometimes it's frustrating when you're trying to talk to somebody, and they're like, oh, and you know what happened to me? And then they bring it back on them. And I think people do that, and I do it too. People do it innocently. They're like, well, I just, I want you to know that I relate to you about this. But, if someone came to you and they're talking about something going on with them, they need you to listen and not like add your experience or try to fix it for them. That's all I'm trying to say. So, a little more about me and my different mental health illnesses and diagnoses. I want to start out with the OCD thing. The OCD piece, as a therapist might say. So, most of the time when I'm filming myself or if I'm taking a selfie or something, it's very carefully curated. I have a lot of makeup on and I have like maybe a filter happening, not to make my skin perfect, but just I take a bunch of selfies to get just one that'll work. So OCD, I think a lot of people, when they think about OCD, they think, oh, that person is constantly cleaning and they're so OCD about dust and, dust mites and germs. For me, it is not germs so much. It's body related, like hyperfixations almost. And that's the thing that I struggle with the most with OCD. I've seen, doctors, dermatologists. Sometimes I have my dermatillomania under control, and sometimes I don't. And I think when my mental health is not great, that's when you can see it in my face. Here, look. Here is a picture of me today with no makeup on. You wouldn't believe it by looking at this, but I am constantly trying to keep my skin clear, and I wash my face, but I can't leave my skin alone. I keep picking at it, and it's so annoying because I know I need to stop, and it keeps happening. I do it without even thinking about it. I think this really started when I got Invisalign, because I used to chew my nails and my skin on my fingers and cuticles to bits, and that was what I mostly did. I have had, times where I would pick at my skin a lot, but I think it got really bad when I couldn't bite my nails because I had Invisalign. So I really focused on picking at my skin. And what I do is I'm very obsessed with shaving my whole face, making sure I want my skin to be nice and smooth, but what I end up doing is messing with it too much to the point that it looks like this. I mean, look up pictures online, do Google images and look up dermatillomania or exorciation. I'm not really sure how to pronounce that one. It's the same thing, basically. But skin picking disorder, just look it up. And it looks kind of like this, spots. People have it on their face, on their arms. I don't do it on my hands or arms, but definitely my face. It's scarring too. My skin looked like this a couple years ago, and then I finally figured out I had dermatillomania, and I never even heard that word before. And I saw a dermatologist, and I was taking medication for OCD. I was diagnosed with OCD, and finally my skin started to really improve because I was really I was working at it. I was really focused on trying to help myself with that and skincare routine and everything. So I'm still obsessed with skincare, and I'm still obsessed with trying to keep my skin nice, but I have to wear a lot of makeup. I have to wear a lot of concealer because I have spots all over my face. It's really embarrassing. I don't even know why I'm sharing this picture, because I feel like people are going to misunderstand and think, oh, she's got poor hygiene. That's not really the case. I really don't. It's just I got OCD. I can't stop picking at my skin. Some people pick at their hair, and that's called trichotillomania, and they do it to the point where they have bald spots on their head. Okay, they pluck out all their eyebrows, their everything, and I kind of get that because I pluck out any hair I see, and I shave any hair I see on my face, and I pull out my eyelashes sometimes, and it's something you do when you are feeling that OCD compulsion. If you're feeling that compulsion, basically, even if you don't feel bad, it's just a compulsion. It really is. It's something you got to do at that moment. So OCD and anxiety, it kind of goes hand in hand. And that's something I've dealt with for so long, is pretty severe anxiety. Sometimes it's not bad at all. And right now, my anxiety is much lower. I think one of the medications I take, propranolol, what it does is it blocks all that those symptoms of anxiety, like if you feel it in your stomach and everything, and you just have that like nervous, like you feel sweaty and like anything panicky, it kind of gets rid of that. And that's what's helping me, because for a while now, over a year now, I've been feeling pretty good about like not being anxious. I used to get so much anxiety that I would panic every time I'd have to be in a classroom or in a crowd or even outside the house sometimes. Have you heard of agoraphobia? It's a real thing, and it's something I've dealt with. I have been agoraphobic. It actually got really bad in 2018, 2019. I could not leave the house. I had so much trouble leaving the house. It was a battle. And in fact, I would walk all the way to, I don't know, just like 4 houses away. And I would feel scared, like, and panicky, and I'd have to turn back. It was so much anxiety. It was really bad. And that was, that was agoraphobia. And I don't wish that on anybody. So if you ever hear about someone who can't leave their house, just know that it feels like you just have such an impending sense of doom trying to get out of the house and leave and do anything. So I'm really glad. I think that's probably one of the worst things about the different mental health things I go through is panic attacks and agoraphobia. And I started getting panic attacks when I was 12 or 13. They started to get really bad then. And the first time I would get them, I'd be like, what is happening to me? Am I dying? Why do I feel like this? Then I learned what they were, but I didn't take anxiety medication until I was about 28, I think. Yeah, I finally started taking Zoloft after I had my 3rd child, because my anxiety and depression would get really bad after I would have each of my kids. I would feel very agoraphobic and panicky. So after I had my 3rd child, I was like, you know what, I hate this. I'm going to go find a therapist or I need a doctor to help me figure this out. I will say, actually, after I had my 3rd child, I didn't even realize I had postpartum depression. The doctor noticed it. Like they figured it out about me when I wasn't at the doctor for myself. I was at a checkup for my baby, who was like a few weeks old. And they're like, you have postpartum depression and anxiety, and you need to maybe take medication for this and see a therapist. And that's when I finally started taking medication and seeing a therapist. And that was 2014. And I was 28, and I was, I would actually take my little baby with me to the therapy appointments too. Because he was that small, and so I would take him with me. And then, like I said, started taking Zoloft, and it really, really helped. But of course, medication doesn't always work forever. Your body gets used to it, and it doesn't work sometimes. After some years of taking Zoloft, it just didn't work for me anymore, and I had to stop taking it. So yeah. I was like, so here's I'm going to get to the bipolar thing, because when you are bipolar, it means some people, they used to call it manic depressive, and you go throughout periods of feeling really up and then really down. And that's called mania or hypomania. And then there's bipolar depression. So if you have bipolar, and this is what happened to me, like in 2016, 2017, I feel like I was feeling really up, like a lot of ideas. Like you feel like you're full of ideas. Like I'm full of great ideas. I'm full of energy. And I was doing a lot of stuff. I started an Etsy shop, and we moved, and I just was doing a lot of stuff. And yeah, so then like 2018, 2019, I started to feel really depressed, really anxious, agoraphobic, panicky, like just very like depressed also. Keep in mind, this is before any of my diagnoses except for anxiety. So I would think to myself, why can't I get back to 2017? Why do I feel like this? I wish I could be like I was then. Why can't I be like who I was last year? I don't get it. How did this happen? Why am I changing? I just want to get back to who I used to be. And I couldn't figure out, like, how do I do it? Why is this happening? What do I do? And so I think that's part of the bipolar thing for me. And when you are manic or hypomanic, it does feel good. It's not always good though, because you do things that are destructive. But later when you're depressed, you're like, oh, I wish I could get back to being manic. It's one of those like mental health disorders that actually feels good. It's kind of weird. I think I also want to mention that during the pandemic, like 2020, 2021 especially, I was really going through a lot of changes with we all were going through changes then. But like the height of the pandemic, I stopped going to church because everyone did. At least people should have stopped going. But I'm not going to get into that. Anyway, I stopped going to church. And as each week went by, as each month went by, I would notice I don't miss it. I don't miss going to church at all. This is nice. I have 2 days a week off. My whole life, like for 30-something years, I've been, like, every Sunday is devoted to church. And Sunday morning, Sunday night, even Wednesday nights, like, you spend a lot of time at church. And being an introverted person who gets drained socially, like, that's exhausting. People are like, oh, well, church is only in like a few hours a day, like a week. It doesn't matter. It takes up the whole day because you're so tired. And most of the time, if you go to church, you have volunteer duties to do. That's part of it. Anyway, so I stopped going to church, and I was raised Pentecostal, Assemblies of God. Evangelical, I guess. You could call it any of those, but it was Assemblies of God. So I was raised that way. And for the past, I don't know, ever since I started having kids, I was mostly going to non-denominational churches. In fact, that's what I was doing right up until the pandemic. I was going to a non-denominational. And if you know anything about those modern non-denominational churches, basically they're like Baptists, but they look different, but they're, Baptists. So, yeah, Pentecostal Baptists, that's where I'm at. Long story short, I think one of the best things about the pandemic, if you could say anything like that, is I started to really deconstruct. I've been deconstructing for a decade at least, slowly, but it really sped up during the pandemic, and I was able to, I had to take a step back from going to church out of habit, because if you're like 30 something and you've been going to church every Sunday, if your butt is not in a pew on Sunday morning, you feel guilty. Like I need to be at church, don't I? It's just a compulsion almost. You have to go. It's a habit. It's how you were raised. That's a whole other story, but deconstructing, that was a big part of my, I hate to say journey so many times, but yeah, it was like my mental health journey of trying to figure out what's going on with me and my brain that sometimes seems to hate me. Church, my religion, was not helping. It was not helpful for me. And now that I've been deconstructing and leaving the church and stepping away from it, I think it was a really good call for me. The only thing I will say is that when you are raised in church and you go every week, multiple times a week, and that's where your people are, I don't know if you've ever heard of a third place, but like your first place is your home, your second place is your work, third place is where you go, like to congregate, literally, and just hang out with people and do things with people. And that's a really important part of living in a society. We live in a society. It's an important part of living in a society where you need that kind of third place. Like some people go to the gym, some people go to a pub or a bar, some people go to the cafe, some people volunteer, just whatever like that. Like you don't have to go to spend money, and you don't have to go because it's like school or whatever, but that's what church is. And that's why people keep going and like going back every week. And it becomes a habit, you get used to it. So, I think I don't want to like go on and on about my church stuff, but I will just end it with like deconstructing was a big part of my whole thing, like figuring out my mental health, like aspects of my mental health and my diagnoses and everything. Just stepping back from the religious piece. And also, when you are raised in certain religions, a lot of mental health and mental illnesses, anything having to do with mental health, like if you have any kind of mental health issues or disorders, anything like that, it's kind of blamed on Satan, or like you need to be spiritually fed, you need to be in church praying, pray it away. I'm not saying all churches, but it's really heavily implied, like if you're feeling this way, you just got to read the Bible more. If you're feeling that bad, you got to just keep praying and giving it to God. Give it to Jesus. You can do it. Jesus can help free you. And yeah, sometimes religion does help people, but like it's just not helpful when you are feeling a certain way and you don't know why, and then someone says, well, you just didn't pray enough. You didn't read the Bible enough. You're not like sacrificing it all to God enough, And you feel like you do. Like that's part of my OCD. Like it was religious OCD. I was so obsessed with praying for hours and writing long prayer lists and reading the Bible and memorizing and studying. Like you get up, if you have OCD and you're religious, it really lends itself to like obsessively like poring over the scripture and praying and just trying to figure out like, and I would keep journals. I would write for hours. My hand would cramp up. Like, I felt like I was doing the work, and it still didn't seem to matter because I still had this chemical imbalance in my head, in my brain, in my body, and a little, some trauma mixed in there. So, yeah, I think that's why it's important that I mention the whole church deconstructing religion thing. I also want to add that I have lived most of my life just, thinking and taking it for granted that I'm straight. But I'm not. I'm bisexual. And I really came out last year to everybody, but it's something I've known for years. It's just I never was really out. It wasn't something that I was sure about until very recently. And I'm 37 now, and I just think if somebody out there is like a lot younger than me and they already know that about themselves, that I kind of envy you that you know this stuff about yourself that young, because I wish I had. But I do now. And yeah, so that is part of what happened. It was like a domino effect with the deconstructing from church. Just now that I have like the deconstructing from church thing going, and I don't necessarily believe everything I used to believe, I can really start exploring this side of me. Just knowing that I'm, bisexual. I am married to a man. I've never been with a woman, but I know that about myself. I mean, you just know, don't you? Like, if you're hetero cis male out there, and you know that's who you are. You were born that way, and you just feel like that, and you're never gonna change it, and you don't want to change it. That's kind of how it is for me and other people that are in the LGBTQ community. I think it's interesting because I moved to the deep south, and then I started becoming more and more liberal and deconstructing from religion and coming out as bi after moving to an even more conservative place. So that's kind of odd, but you know what? Life is weird. So it doesn't always fit into perfect patterns and categories, I think as people, like human beings, we want things to make sense. And that's actually part of the whole church thing for me, like wanting things to make sense, having magical thinking, and just thinking like it was meant to be. I found this scripture, it was meant to be. It fits in with this. I just know that it was a God thing. And if that's how you believe, that's fine, but it kind of turns into something called magical thinking, where you see conspiracies or coincidences or patterns everywhere because that's what your brain wants to do. But that doesn't mean it's true. Sometimes just, things aren't fair, and there's no such thing as karma or whatever. And I don't believe that there's a God that actually would just punish and discipline and then give blessings to whomever, good or bad. That doesn't make any sense. Really good things have happened to such bad people. Really bad things happen to good people. And it doesn't make any sense. People try. I'm not want to offend anybody. I keep saying I'm going to stop talking about church, but you don't want bad things to happen to good people, so you have to like figure out why it happened. You're like, well, it must have been God's will. It must have been this. It was good. At the end, it all worked out, and we're so glad that it happened. But yeah. So that's, I don't know. It's hard to like not talk about being bi and being, having this whole church thing, deconstructing thing, when I'm talking about my mental health and my mental illnesses, because it's really all like bundled up, it's all bundled up there in my head. So that's why I'm kind of talking about that a lot. But it's a big part of it. Like, if you are trying to figure out who you are, you're gonna, so I would say like 5 years ago, I was like a straight Christian, and all I knew was I had anxiety and depression. 5 years later, I am bi. I'm not an atheist or an agnostic even. I don't know what I am. I am actually pretty open to supernatural things, and I'm open to the idea that there is a creator, but I just can't reconcile with the Bible that says God would kill innocent people in a flood and just say, well, they weren't innocent then. Of course there were innocent people. If you believe the flood story, you have to believe that there were a lot of children and babies and maybe mentally disabled people that, they weren't evil. Like, that doesn't make any sense. That's just one story out of a million. But yeah, that's who I am. And now I know that I have bipolar 2. I have a generalized anxiety. I have OCD, dermatillomania. I have ADHD. And I probably have borderline personality disorder. It's possible that I have border polar disorder, or I was misdiagnosed and I don't have bipolar and I actually have borderline personality disorder. That's the thing. I told you, it takes a long time to really pinpoint anything. But yes, that is who I am, at least in this point in time. So the ADHD thing, I think what I end up doing is really overcompensating, because I used to run late all the time, forget stuff all the time. So now I'm like, the OCD comes into play, maybe, I don't know. But I am so like obsessed with not forgetting things and not getting too distracted that I'm distracting myself a lot by obsessively like writing lists. I have lists for my lists, okay? I've got notes. I've got like a big calendar with stuff written on it. I've got a notepad next to it. I've got dozens of different notes on my notes app on my phone. I keep my phone on my person at all times. I check my different notes and lists, and when I'm trying to not be late, it's really hard for me to figure out like how time works sometimes. I'm like, it's almost like you don't know how long it's going to take to get somewhere or to do something. So I end up like either being late or really early. It's very rare that I'm like, I know exactly like what time to leave and get there on time, So that's kind of the ADHD thing. I was not diagnosed with this as a child. And, back when I was a kid, people were either ADHD or ADD. But I think nowadays they just say ADHD. I don't think anyone is ADD at this point. I don't know. But yes, I think a lot of people have ADHD. I think what happens in this modern world we live in, we have so many choices and distractions. I don't see how anyone couldn't, honestly. So I think out of all the different struggles I go through, the ADHD thing, it's bothersome, but it's not like the most bothersome. I want to get into the borderline personality disorder thing, BPD. So I haven't been formally diagnosed, but like I've said, I've had 2 different mental health professionals suggest that I probably have it. And I didn't even think about it before. I didn't know much about it, so it never occurred to me. But now that I have been introduced to that whole idea that I could have it, and I've looked up the symptoms, it does make sense because I think it's really a pattern in my life to have chaotic relationships with people and to fight with people and to have crying breakdowns, and for my feelings to be so very sensitive that they're like rose petals or something. Like, even if someone didn't mean to hurt my feelings, maybe it was just a slight, it was just a little like moment where I misread something. My brain is like, they hate you and you are awful. Of course they hate you. And it's like, it goes to like the darkest places, and you just you feel sort of destroyed. And having BPD is like, you're just waiting for people to leave you. You're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. You just know that eventually this is not going to work and they're going to leave you, or they're going to hate you or something for something you did. And I have had a lot of falling outs with family members and friends. I've lost friends. I've lost family. I have been abusive and cruel to people, and I have had screaming arguments, and I've had altercations. It's like, it just seems to keep happening, even though I'm really trying not to, It's so annoying. I mean, yeah, it's like tragic, but it's annoying because I'm like, how did this happen again? How did I get into this fight with someone that I love? Like, how did this, or why am I so hurt by this? They didn't do that much. If like intellectually I'm looking at it and it's like, well, why are you so mad about it? Why is this so hurtful? It feels like the end of the world sometimes, and I don't know how else to explain it. It's like the thing about, like, if you have BPD, you have a favorite person, an FP, they say, or maybe a few favorite people. Like, you're obsessed with them, you become really clingy, you're always talking, you're always texting them. Something that I've done in the past is over-text and just send way too many messages and memes and videos and stuff, and then eventually they gently tell me, like, you need to stop. And it's like, I feel so hurt. And because obviously I didn't mean to annoy them, but I thought I was doing something friendly, but I ended up doing something that was just, I was taking up their energy and their time. And it's also like, I don't know how to explain it. And then you just want to say, well, you used to be my favorite person and I worshipped you, but now I will never talk to you again. You're dead to me. That's where you want to go when you have BPD. At least that's where I want to go sometimes.
Because it's like if you're so hurt, you can't just keep that person in your life sometimes. Like if you just want to like cut them off and pretend they're dead and just don't even think about them again, because that's the only way you can get through it. And that's happened to me. Like I used to just love certain people and I would cling to them. And then something happened and now I barely remember them. Like I just sort of cut them out of my brain, you know? It's kind of, some people don't get that. They're like, how can you do that? How can you cut someone off like that? I don't know. It's like you've got these really high standards for everyone else, but I don't know if you necessarily have them for yourself. I don't know. Obviously, I'm just talking about my own personal experience. I'm not saying everybody who has any of these mental health issues is exactly like this. But that's kind of the BPD piece with me.
All right. I feel like I said everything I needed to say. This is 12 hours later, by the way. I've had a long day, and it wasn't even a great day, but I didn't want to upload everything immediately anyway. So I'm happy with what I shared, and I hope it resonates with someone. I love it when I go on YouTube or anything, and I see somebody and I'm like, oh, that's me. She's just like me. He's just like me. I get what he's saying. Finally, someone else gets it. And that's why I decided to talk about all this, because it's like everybody's unique, yes, but a lot of people have the mental illnesses that I have. Maybe not in the exact combination, but a lot of people have deconstructed from religion. A lot of people have gone to churches like I've gone to. A lot of people are about my age, or millennials. Maybe never feeling like you have ever fit in. Very poor sense of self. Actually, that's part of BPD, I learned. Very poor sense of identity. Anyway, I hope someone out there got something out of this, and I hope I made sense. Honestly, I was listening to this just now, and I was kind of relaxing, and it almost made me like want to fall asleep. It was kind of relaxing. So even if you only fell asleep to this, that's pretty cool. In fact, I like the idea of like you being asleep and I'm inside your mind right now. I can control your dreams. What else can I do? All right, anyway, I think I'm gonna upload this now. And you all have a good rest of your night, rest of your day. Don't forget to hydrate. Don't forget to get some sunshine. Just remember, you're like a plant. You need sunshine and air and water. There's a lot of other stuff you need too, but yeah. Don't forget to step away from the screens. Step away from the texting and the phone. If social media is making you mad immediately, you need maybe step back. If something makes you mad immediately, that's a clue that it's there to make you mad. So I don't remember who said that, but that was like a wise person once said that, or maybe a lot of wise people said it. Yep. I want my channel to be like a good place of I don't want anyone to get mad. I just want people to have fun and laugh, and I want to vent sometimes. I like discussion. It's a very small channel still. But for anyone who does see it, I know people see it. I mean, if you've made it this far, I don't know, how long are we? Almost an hour in. If you've made it this far and you've made it to this moment, I want you to comment down below. You are my sunshine. And then I'll know you watched the whole thing. Okay. Bye.